Season 3 of the Amani Experience podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, author, and undercover gamer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience podcast.
All right, I would like to welcome Heather Mason to the Amani Experience podcast.
Well, thank you. I am very excited to be here today.
We are excited to have you. We do a geographical check-in whenever we start our interviews. So right now, I'm in quarantine life, Redondo Beach, California. Where are you located?
I left LA and I am in Idaho Falls, Idaho, where I was born and raised.
Nice.
So I'm here with my parents, making sure they stay inside and eat their vegetables.
I respect that. Well done. What was it like growing up in Idaho Falls?
You know, it was a small town life, kind of. I mean, at 40,000, but to me that feels small town now. And it's a great community. It's very, I guess, family-based community, and so I feel very lucky that I grew up here, even though now I live in LA. And it just gives you good roots, I think, growing up in small towns.
Indeed. I understand you are and were a soccer player, started at age 5.
Yes.
What position did you start off with playing?
What position?
Yes.
So center half was always my favorite.
Oh,
and I played that. Yeah, I played that all the way through college, actually. I wanted to play post-college. My dream was to be on the national team. Didn't make it. But I still play on 2 leagues in LA. So full field women's and an internal, or I do LA Galaxy soccer indoor.
Okay. So. If you ever want to come and play with me on co-ed, 7v7, we'd love to have a guest.
Oh, hey, I used to play 7v7 over at Crossroads, and then I played down at Aviation Field too.
Yeah, I played at Aviation as well too, and play over at Manhattan Village. So, cool. I grew up playing sweeper and now play midfield. So I love meeting a fellow soccer player.
That's right.
You went to Utah State. What inspired you to major in journalism and marketing?
Well, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Isn't that funny? So I really liked journalism. I liked print journalism, especially learning about people's stories. And then I picked up marketing because I thought, well, I should know something about business. And with events, I always like to say now that they're a product of, I worked in the film industry, so movies and marketing equals events. But oddly enough, I ran all the major events on my college campus. So as the Arts and Lectures VP. And so in a sense, you could say I've been doing this since I was in college.
Yes, you have, and doing it well, I might add. Hello out to Stephanie as well. She's joining us on a live stream. My first question for you is, who are the 5 people that serendipity came into your life, or serendipitously, I believe I'm saying that right, came into your life and changed it forever?
Wow, that is such a good question, because that's what I based. I started a girls' conference, and I started it based on my experience with those 5 people. And I always say you have to find your 5. So I was a very shy kid, oddly, when I was in junior high. It's hard to believe now because now you can't get me off stage. But one woman was a dance teacher, and you can't do ballroom dance unless you stand up straight. And so I'd never stood up straight before, and she forced me to. And that already just changes the way you approach the world. My second one was my debate coach, who taught me how to speak into the world and form ideas and really know how to articulate a thought. And then there was a walking coach, oddly enough, who retired to Idaho Falls, Idaho, and used to train USA Miss America pageant winners. And so she taught me how to have presence and poise and be able to speak on stage well. And then there was my history teacher who said I was a leader, and I didn't believe him. And then lastly, there was a woman who told me I should never have a perm again, thank goodness for her, and gave me a makeover. So changed my life entirely and helped me get my voice out into the world that I think would have been stifled otherwise.
Okay. Okay. Now, how would you summarize yourself where you are currently in 30 seconds or less?
Living my dream. I'm getting to do strategy work around convenings and engagements for large organizations who are changing the world for good. I could not be more happy.
All right. I love it. I love it. I'm curious to know, what does the Chronicles of Narnia mean to you?
These are such great questions. I can tell you did a lot of homework. So Caspian, the name of my company, is derived from the Chronicles of Narnia. And there's a moment in one of the books that the kids go to rescue this prince below ground, and there's a witch who tells them that all of their dreams are worthless and made up, and they should just accept their lot in life, basically, and live down here in the underworld because nothing else is possible. And of course, Puddleglum the Marshwiggle puts his hand in the fire and says that's ridiculous. And apparently there's nothing like the smell of burnt marshwiggle to bring you to your senses. And so they, of course, go back up to the upper world, realize those were all lies. And I always thought that moment in time captures what it's like to start a company, because you have to put your hand in the fire. It's painful. It's hard. It's not easy. And it's a lot easier to accept your lot in life because there's no guarantees. And I didn't think Puddleglum or Marshwiggle would be a good company name.
I think you chose well, so that's good. Shout out to Bernie. Hopefully the sound is a little better, Bernie. Let me know. But thank you for tuning in and give me some AV feedback. I'm curious, first, what was it like when you had the chance to work with Sir Richard Ranson?
Oh, it's funny because he is one of my heroes. I mean, I look up to how he started businesses, how he, told you to treat people. And so I was very excited to meet him. And I was backstage at an event and he was going to be there. And he walked backstage and I said, hey, I'm Heather Mason. I'll be your producer today. And he said, great, where's my panel? And I said, yeah, about that. They haven't shown up yet. I could not believe they hadn't shown up. I was so mad. But I said, and I'm really sorry. And he looked at me and he said, you mean to say that I'm here and I left my children, who he hadn't seen, his grown children were at college, so he hadn't seen them in a long time. And they had kind of converged at this particular event, but they only had a couple hours. And he'd left having lunch with them to do this walkthrough right before our show. And he said, you mean to tell me I left my children, who I rarely see, to come here, and there are not people here to work with me? Who made me come here? And I looked at him, I was like, that's me. And he was so mad. And so I just felt horrible. This is my hero. And I said, you can go upstairs. We can get a photo of you. We have an interview room. They're ready to do an interview. And so he kind of stormed upstairs. And I thought, I am a horrible person. And then he came back down after that. The panelists finally arrived. Oh, could have killed them. And right before he went on stage to do a walkthrough with them, he met me for 5 seconds. He pulled me aside. He remembered my name. And he said, your name's Heather, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm really sorry. You're just doing your job. And you look like you're doing a great job. And I was just reacting because I love my kids. And I looked at him and I said, you're one of my heroes. I started my business. We had a little conversation and it was lovely. And I thought, yeah, that is a good guy. My experience was totally positive. Okay. And I was just struck that he took time to have that moment with me and apologize to me. So I don't know. It showed me a lot of character.
Yeah, most people don't take the time. So respect to Sir Richard Ranson.
Yes.
In today's environment, what do you think is important for creative professionals such as yourself or myself to succeed?
I've given a lot of thought to this. And it's interesting that you asked me about my marketing background in college, because that's when I discovered a couple things that I think really inform my thinking about where we are right now. One of them was an article on Kodak Film Company. And if you read that, it's all about how, the Kodak Film Company owned 90% of the market of film. And then they went bankrupt. But the story of that is really interesting because, yes, we could say that digital won out, but most people don't know that Kodak had the first digital camera.
They did.
They were first to market they didn't want to promote that because they were afraid it would cannibalize their film business. So they were in fear of what was coming in the future. And they thought if they just kind of shut it down and held it close, they would win. And yet the companies that succeeded were the ones that thought of themselves far bigger than product. They thought of themselves as storytelling companies, memory making companies. Those companies never go out of business because they're far bigger than a product or a service can be. And I think what we need to think about as creative professionals is if we think all we are is a venue with some food and beverage and muffins, yeah, we deserve whatever we get because we're a film company hiding digital. If we think of ourselves as connection, engagement, convening, human interaction, that is never going to go away for the time that humans live on the planet. That is exciting. And I am thrilled that we get to get more creative about that.
What tips would you give for existing businesses and maybe new businesses that are struggling with creating themselves as like a memory company?
Yeah, I think it's about, I don't know if people out there, every once in a while, you go to these fancy restaurants and they'll have a dessert and it'll be like deconstructed s'more. And, a deconstructed s'more is usually a little pot of chocolate ganache. I grew up in Idaho, so we just had s'mores, but now I've understood these things. And, it'll be, vanilla scented whipped cream on the side above, right? But I do think from a practical tip standpoint, it's about deconstructing your business. What really makes your business your business? And what parts of it are unique to you as a professional and to your business? And what kind of value gets you just excited and jazzed up? That to me tells you where your purpose is. It tells me, where your value proposition is. And then I think you rebuild your s'more.
Okay.
That's how I would see it. I mean, that's what we're doing because we're right here with y'all,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Explain to us, how did you have the courage to just leave your event management executive position at Charles Schwab?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I did. I just quit and I had $1,400 in the bank and I was living in the Bay Area. So for people who know that, that's not very much to live on. And I think it's also important to note, I don't come from family money or uncles that are fund me, or, if I made mistakes, it wasn't like I had a big cushy pillow. And when I talk to teenage girls about entrepreneurship, I make sure they know that, because I think it feels a lot scarier and riskier when you don't have that. And I think it's important for people. I didn't have that. But what I did have was a fear greater, which was I was going to live in a business and a company that I didn't feel was a fit for who I wanted to be in the world. I have always been, I like to say Caspian's a SWAT team with the heart of Pollyanna. And that's me. I want to save the world. I want to move and make a barbaric yop. And I thought it is scarier to me to not have a chance to do that than it is to pick up my application at Starbucks and Subway and be a waitress at night. I'd rather face that than kind of muddling away at Charles Schwab. It's a great company. It just wasn't a fit for who I am. And I couldn't face that fear. And I think that's the equation you have to make, is which fear is greater for you. I would rather be poor. And I've lived in walk-in closets. I've lived in garages. I've done that before. That doesn't scare me. What scares me is not living my purpose.
What's your definition of fear?
I think for me, it is, there's so many possible roads I could go down. But I think it's scarcity. I think it's a fundamental, you almost have a belief in scarcity to be in deep fear. And as soon as you go into abundance and gratitude, it's very difficult to also live in fear at the same time.
If people have the scarcity mindset, what advice would you give them? Because it can be tough to shift to the abundance mindset. And I'm curious for your answer, because you grew up playing soccer. Soccer is very competitive. There can only be one winner. But when you have the abundance mindset, it's like we all can be winners. How did you make that shift?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, and I do, I'm very competitive. So I really am. But I think the thing for me in competition that soccer always taught me is I always respected the people that could beat me. I had a wonderful opportunity to get to play against Christine Lilly. And, she was on that 90s team, Mia Hamm. For the Gen Xers, they'll maybe remember her.
Yes.
And I've never had so much respect for somebody in my life. I was at the top of my game. I was in such good shape. I mean, I was playing like nobody's business. I could outrun people. She dribbled around me like I was a cone. And there's something joyful about watching people who are excellent. And I think that's where abundance is. Christine Lilly can be an excellent soccer player. She's way better than me. But I can still be excellent in my own way. And maybe not at soccer, but I guarantee you I can beat Christine Lilly probably at project management. I feel very confident about that. And I haven't played her on that field yet, but there's plenty of fields to play on. And I guess that's where I would make the shift is if you only focus on one field, I have to win the incentive marketplace. So that's one field. If you start to go, I can focus on a convening engagement field, you got a lot more fields to jump to, and you're probably going to be good on one of them. So I'll invite Christine Lilly to play me in project management and producing, and we'll see how we go.
All right. I'm going to tweet this out and tag her in the tweet, see if she responds.
That'd be great. I have so much respect for her.
Definitely. What was the turning point of your career?
Oh, gosh. These are great questions. I would say the turning point of my career was really when I realized that logistics are not where events are, it's in strategy. And if you're going to go in strategy, you have to think of a different way to sell that strategy. And as soon as we started to really focus on that, everything fell into place. And that's why the Caspian 10 Essentials to me are the essential, because that then focuses everything that I want to do. And that changed the way we approached our company. I think if I was going to add to that at the same exact time, I determined fairly early on, I only wanted to work with companies changing the world. But creating and focusing on that very niche focus and making a commitment to that focus was definitely a turning point as well, because that then aligns you with where you really want to go. And I feel so strongly about it and so purposeful about it. It then led to all these different sparks and constellations of how our clients could overlap and work together. And all of a sudden, we started to offer value far beyond their convening, their event. We started to offer what I like to call connection capital between them. And that felt monumental.
You mentioned logistics, you mentioned project management. Why do you feel that meeting planners in organizations don't command the respect that we currently deserve?
Well, first of all, I would love to get rid of that term meeting planner. I want it to just go away and get in a dust ball rack in somebody's attic and we never look at it again. Because I think the word planner, now I think there's a place for that. I'm not saying there's not, but it's kind of like lawyers and paralegals, surgeons and nurses, architects and a general contractor or a handyman. When I say any of those titles, and words are so important and titles are so critical, you know exactly the level of professionalism, training, and ability to break through in a barrier and get into any of those professions. Saying planner, well, everybody plans. It's a ubiquitous word. It's not a word that is, held for a professional term. So if I say I plan my weekend and I'm a planner, that can easily be said. If I say I surgeoned this weekend, you'd probably be curious about me saying that. And if I said, I lawyered just yesterday for a couple of minutes, you'd also be confused. But plan is something every single person on the planet says. So associating an entire profession with that word means we dilute our ability to have a barrier to entry to our profession. To say a lawyer means you commanded all this education, training, etc., and you deserve money for that. Saying you are a general contractor, a surgeon, same thing. So planning is not helping us. That's why I say producer, I say project management, because I rarely encounter my friends saying, I project managed my way with friends to go to a movie this weekend. Whereas they will say, I plan to go to a movie this weekend. So I think that's one of the first steps in distancing ourselves is truly the title. And I get onto people about that because I really believe that. And I think it holds us back from respect and power. I have some other opinions too, but I just want to start on that because I think it's the kernel where we should start.
Right. You explained that very, very nicely. I appreciate that because it's true. Just with the way you don't say you surgeoned or you lawyered, so that's a really good way of breaking it down. I appreciate that.
Oh, good.
Why do you love what you do?
Oh, I love what I do. I almost feel bad about it because whenever I speak at colleges or at high schools, I almost can't understand why any kid would want to do anything else. Because to me, if you want to make things happen from nothing, you're a producer. I can produce anything. That's why I don't plan it. I produce it. I create it. I take an idea that someone has or I have, and I make it happen. Who gets to say they do that? I mean, yes, there's professions that do that, but they still have to use the process of project management to get there. The process that we use underlies anything that goes from idea to a thing into the world. So we are like the underpinnings. I mean, I get so excited about our business. We are the underpinnings of creating realities. And what more could I want to do than be able to go out and dent the universe whenever I want to? And when I talk to kids who are in high school or college and they go, what do you do? I go, tell me an idea you have. Tell me what you'd want to create. I can do that. I know the process to do that. And that makes you feel like you are outside of the matrix. And I think the more we adopt that and really promote that as that truly is our profession, damn, we are worth a lot of money.
Yes, we are. Not 6, but 7 figures.
Yes.
But I digress.
I totally agree with you.
Continuing the theme on love, and then you spoke about students, both in high school and college. Talk to us about your vision, how it came to be with the Surefire Girls Conference, and the growth that you've seen so far.
This is one of my favorite topics in the world. So the first time I did the Surefire Girls Conference, I like to say it was like 1,000 Christmases rolled into one day. I get super excited about working with teenage girls to ascend to their potential. And the best part is their potential can be anything. I think sometimes we put on that, well, you need to be blah, blah, blah. You could be, in a sense, your dream can be to be a tattoo artist, a hairstylist, a lawyer, a surgeon, a paralegal, a interior designer. I don't care what it is, but I love watching students find what I call their superpower. And when you find your superpower, you are giving back to the world and yourself in a way that is impossible in any other way. You're not trying to be anything. You're actually adding to the human race, your unique participant element. And that makes me excited. So that's what I try to help, kids do through Surefire Conference. And we did it twice in LA. We did it once in Utah. And it's really a collective action model. So we get all the nonprofits that are working with the girls in any given community, but we bring them under one tent for one day so the girls can see, experience, dip in and out of all these different organizations that exist in their very community to help them. So we don't create a new organization for them. We just collect it like connective tissue so that parents, kids, everybody can see you already have this in your community. You just need to be able to access it. And you can find your 5 people.
Yes, and we all need to find our 5 people. So I really respect the work you're doing there. We'll put a link in the show notes where people can go and support Surefire Girls Conference.
It's a nonprofit, 501c3.
Yeah, good. What is something that scares you?
Something that scares me is, well, right now, I think, everyone has a little fear about the COVID. I mean, I talked about my excitement around it, and it's there. But I definitely have some scary feelings about where we're going to go in this brave new world. And I think it all relates to the nice part is most of the things that scare me, I'm working with clients who are actively working to hopefully combat some of those things. So be it, the environment, education, inequity, inequality, injustice, those things, they don't scare me, sometimes make me mad too.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that I can work with clients who are doing something about it, because those are things that keep me up at night. And I guess I get scared. How much time do I have to affect all that change?
Yes.
And I think about my wristwatch every day. I don't have one, but internally, making sure I make the most of my days is always top of mind for me.
I can definitely relate to the time thing. It's kind of like trying to get it all done before our time runs out. So I understand that one as well.
Yeah.
Our industry is very crowded. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
This is where I really look at both abundance and niche focus. So abundance in that I forget the statistic. I think the event world is, somebody can correct me, but it's somewhere but like $63 billion or craziness. So there's plenty to go around. You don't have to win the whole thing. I mean, if you do, the only person I'm in competition with is the person who wants, $62,999,999,000. Well, yeah, okay, stop that. But if they don't, then chances are we're good. And I think that picking a niche focus is very important. Whenever I mentor, and I do try to mentor young women and men who want to start an event business, I'm not threatened by that at all. I don't think any of us should be. That seems kind of silly. If they're Christine Lilly, dribble around you like a cone, you deserve it. Better.
Respect, yes.
Respect, right? So some young kid comes to me and says, I want to learn how to create an event business. Great. My first initial advice is when I say, who's your market? And they go, anybody who wants to do an event. I go, now stop that. Stop that right now. You need to be very niche focused about exactly who your target audience is. You need to be able to describe them like you're describing your best friend. That, to me, is how you distinguish yourself in the space. I mean, Caspian is known for white glove service at the highest level, working with the top level people in their category of saving the world, period. That is our market. We don't do galas, incentives, that's not our market. So we're clear about what we're looking for. And I think we've made a very good name for ourselves in the space by refining it over 15 years. It takes a while.
It does.
But I think that the niche focus is critical. The everyone audience, I think, is very difficult to make a business in.
Yeah. How do you advise people when they do say like, oh, well, I have this niche for this, and then I have this niche for this, and so they are trying to be the everybody audience, and it's scary for them to just focus one thing because they might not have that abundance mindset just yet. What do you kind of share with them to help them get through that?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's where really polling your customers and creating a relationship with your customer is important. Why have you chosen us? What are the things you like that we do? What are the things you like that we don't do? And they're going to give you a lot of information almost about where your hidden value is to them. And then I think if you've got a good client, they actually help you establish your niche because they're going to know people who are like them, who want services like them. And I think that is how we've built our niche business, is by referral that way, but also really polling our client base, and taking them out to lunch, not to get business from them, but to get that idea of where your value is. And I think it's okay to have one or two niches. I think you might not want to put all your eggs in one basket. We do the training, we do strategy packages, we do production. We've got our different alignments. But I wouldn't pick too many. I guess that's it. It's not the everybody. It could be 2 or 3 buckets, and going deep in those.
When we were in the green room, you kind of shared that all things considered, you are excited about what our industry is going through right now. Tell us why.
Yes, I am, because I almost think of that phrase, and I'm butchering it. I know this, but it's the king is dead, long live the king, and that's actually saying the king is dead. We're going to keep the line. I know I'm changing it, but it's, the cheese plate is dead. Long live strategy. I feel like our industry has actually gotten a bad rap strategically because everyone has been able to, our clients, our executives, focus on the cheese plate and the serendipity of a coffee break. And they've gotten ensconced and enamored with, cute snack breaks, for hell's sake. That is not where our value has ever lied. And I have tried to be screaming in the wilderness about our value. And I know that most people probably listening to this podcast have been too. So we should have found each other in the wilderness and screamed together. But finally, all that is stripped away. And when that noise is stripped away, the venue, the prettiness, the cheese plate, what are you left with? You are left with actually as an executive or a client going, oh crap, why were we even doing that? And that, my friends, is strategy. And that is where we plug in. And when they start looking around going, who knows what we should do with this event? We come in, not with a platform, not with a Zoom, not with a blah, blah. We come in saying, we know what you can do because we know strategy. We've known it all along. You just had us ordering cheese plates, damn it. And that is gone. And so I love what Stephanie just said, value added forever, because now we can sit back in our chair. There is no more fight. There is no more cheese plate. And we can go, you need us because we understand the science of convening. We understand that human interaction is critical. Crafting your audience is critical. Crafting their engagements is critical. And who do you need for that? Us. And do you know how much strategy pays? Oh, it pays. And they don't say, can you help us plan a strategy? They say, you are our strategic advisor. And that is what we've always been. Now that is what we shall be. The cheese plate is dead. Long live strategy.
You are preaching to the choir on a Friday. I love it. I love it. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Oh, there's so many failures. Gosh, that's hard. I think one of my biggest failures, I have two huge ones. One of them was when I booked the wrong billboard on Sunset Boulevard for $100,000. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. Yeah, you should look like that. Yeah, it was bad. It was very bad. It was $100,000 mistake. Thankfully, my CEO, when I was 26 or 7 or something stupid, fixed it. And we actually got another banner, but that will stick in my head forever about you need to really check your contracts. So I am a contract master. I know contracts backwards and forwards. I feel so confident in my contractual abilities. And that stemmed from that 27-year-old deep, deep, deep mistake. I would say the other one is this was a learning. There was a volcano at one of our events that happened and stranded us all. And then later on, there was a fire. And I learned very quickly that to manage a team through a crisis is to actually ask the hardest thing of producers and project managers, which is to stay still while you solve the crisis and make the plan with the client. That was a failure on my behalf at the moment, which really sucks. But I got to reinstate it at a different crisis later and put those learnings into place, and that felt good. But both of those were painful. Yeah.
Yes, painful. The billboard. So if we take the billboard and we go to the opposite direction, you've then acquired much acclaim. You've been written up in several magazines. You've gotten awards. Now you will acquire critics or haters, as we call them. How do you now handle your critics?
Yeah, you always do, don't you? What's that statement? The nail sticks too far up, a hammer hits it. My other favorite one is, you stick your head out, somebody's going to try to chop it off. But, I think it's more fun to have opinions and get out there and have them debated in public. And I guess this is my debate coach speaking through me, than to hide them and try to be always consensus driven. I don't think consensus driven drives us forward. I think healthy debate does. But I do think that's also where we have to have that abundance mentality and not fear disagreement, not fear other ideas in the space. So I'm willing to weigh in with anyone as long as it's respectful. I can't really abide people who are name callers because that's the lowest form of anger. But I will absolutely abide people who have excellent, well thought out arguments.
Yeah. I love how you continue to talk about the abundance mindset. I think that's really important, and I appreciate you doing that. Tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, I would say the darkest time in my life was when I had a stroke at age 40. And that was extremely frightening, scary, disconcerting, everything. And I thought I was going to die, or I thought I was going to wake up and be paralyzed and not be able to speak anymore, since I wasn't able to speak at the time. And I think the one thing that it did for me is we had a client at the time that was very abusive, frankly, abusive to me. And I will use that word because it applies. I think people who have been in this industry know the difference between just not clients are tricky and tough, but then there's some that are outright abusive. And this was one of them. And I think this is what pushed me to this point, among other things. And I remember waking up the next day in the hospital and figuring out I could move my arms, my legs, and I could speak. And my mouth had come back. And I thought, I will never let an abusive client kill me. And we do not work with abusive clients now. And tricky, tough, sure, whatever. But if it's outright abuse, I will fire that client immediately. I'm not going to die because of a client. That's what I learned.
Valuable lesson. What was going through your mind, if you can remember, as you were suffering and going through the stroke?
Wow. What was going through my mind was, this is how they're going to find me, on my, garage floor in my office. And I don't want this to be the end. I don't want this to be how I go. And I remember thinking, here I am working really late, and everyone was gone from the office. I was alone, and I don't want this to be my legacy. And if this is my legacy because of stress, and again, this kind of constant barrage I had been going through at the time, then I need to make some major changes. If I wake up through this, I'm going to make some major changes.
Wow.
And that's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
Like, who found you? How'd you get to the hospital? Like that, you had some people were looking out for you. What happened?
Yeah. So actually, a friend of mine ended up calling me, and I couldn't quite answer the phone. My hands weren't working, but I figured out a way to make my knuckle kind of answer the phone. And I just kind of moaned, and in my head, I was saying, hey, I think I need to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they finally heard me and rushed over, and probably came in about 10, 15 minutes, and then drove me to the hospital. And that was a real frustrating experience, because they just kept looking at me going, gosh, you're so young. It looks like you're having a stroke, but we don't know. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had kind of figured out how to moan into my phone, theory, stroke symptoms. And I knew that I only had a couple hours to get the special, stuff they put in you to the brain from melting. Mm-hmm. And it actually took this particular hospital, I was pretty pissed off about it, a long time. They were right on the line of letting my brain melt. Because they were so fascinated that I was young and in shape and played soccer. And I thought, this is not the time for amusement.
It is not, no.
And when you can't use your mouth, yeah, it's really hard. And thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you saying that it is more relevant than ever. And it's relevant to our profession. It's relevant to our lives. It's relevant to COVID. That I think it's really important that we put a time out on people that try to abuse us in any way, shape, or form, and say, no, there is right relationship and there is unacceptable behavior that if it's pushing us over the edge is worth, it's worth living in a garage for. It's worth living in a walk-in closet. And I think I feel lucky that I grew up in a way that I'm not used to having a lot. So the thought of living in a walk-in closet doesn't scare me. Yeah. I would rather do that than work with people who might abuse me, because it's actually not that bad.
Yeah. Well, I echo what Stephanie said. Thank you for your transparency and sharing. So that's very powerful. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Most influential growing up had to be my mama. And I know that sounds trite, but it is. She has just been alongside me, along with my dad. They're still together, but really encouraging me to constantly go above and beyond, and and also discover who I am. Not what anybody else needs me to be, but I think that is something that's irreplaceable. And I know I'm very fortunate to have that. I know not everybody gets that in life, and that to me is why I don't worry about the material things. I feel like I got a treasure that you can't take away.
Yes, you do have a treasure. Absolutely. What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
Uh, think of a way to get things done immediately, like how to organize that, how to figure it out, how to absolutely get it done and move it forward. No problem. I can do that with my eyes closed. It's weird. It's so easy for me. And I find other people don't have that. And that's why it tells me it's my superpower.
Yes.
Because they do things I can't do. But that is the one thing that when they're like, well, how would I ever get this done? I'm like, oh, well, that's easy. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
I'll attribute that to the strategist in you.
that's right.
Definitely.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely. What would you like to be better at?
Oh, gosh. I would love to be better at writing. I enjoy writing, but
Okay.
I would like to be better at my writing. I think there's always room for improvement. And I do think it's some people's superpower. I wouldn't say it's my superpower. Speaking is my superpower, but I'm impressed with people who can write quickly, excellently. It's hard. It's harder for me to get to that point.
I have a book recommendation. Have you heard of Bird by Bird by Annie Lamott?
Yes. And
Have you
I read that way back when, and I
Okay.
really need to go back and read that again. Yep.
Yes, I think it will help you now that you're in a different stage of life. So definitely
Yep.
do that.
I think so.
Yes, when you were 21, you were at Utah State, correct?
Yep.
What city is Utah State in?
It's in Logan, Utah.
So we're going to go back and talk to 21-year-old Heather in Logan, Utah. Give her advice based on what you know now. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh gosh. I would say it's going to take a lot longer than you think to figure out what you want to do with your life. Your 20s are going to be tumultuous, like a whitewater rafting trip. Hang on, go forward, and realize there's actually no way to do it faster. Get as many experiences as you can. Try to stay at companies longer than a year, and accept it all as learning. But you can't move faster than life is going to let you. I think I always tried to do that, and the more I've understood that that's not possible, the better it's been for me.
Speaking of advice, why do you recommend younger people in high school and in college should run for office?
Well, first of all, I think it puts yourself out there. It's scary. It's always scary. You might be rejected on a major platform. Oh my gosh. I always think the more you get rejected, the more it becomes easy, just like a practice thing. People don't want to get rejected because they haven't been rejected. If I never wanted to kick a ball poorly in soccer, I would just stop right now. But as soon as you kick a ball a lot of times and you do it really bad, when you do it good, you're like, that was nice, but you're not afraid of kicking a ball bad. So I feel like we need to have more rejection in our life in a major way, because then it doesn't scare you when it happens later. And when we do a disservice to let kids think they're able to protect themselves from massive rejection and failure, you're not. So just start getting it out of the way as fast as possible. And that's what I say to every kid I mentor is, hey, did you get rejected? Awesome. You probably only have 10 or 15 more to go before you'll probably get a win. Hey, call me when you get your next rejection. Can't wait. Which one are you looking forward to the most? And put yourself up there. And then when you win, damn, it feels good. But You're not afraid of getting rejected again, failing, not getting the promotion. Happen all the time.
Yes, very wise advice. Very wise.
That's right.
What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
Longest to learn was probably that I was going to have a lot more learning to do before I finally became successful. And I kept thinking, where's my success? When am I going to win? When am I going to? And it took me a long time to learn that I needed to just roll with it and not expect too much too quickly.
Cool. All right, last two questions. We love to read here. If there's 1, 2, or 3 books you feel people should stop what they're doing right now to read them, what books come to mind?
Oh, geez. It's an old one. It's by Faith Popcorn. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I love Faith Popcorn. So go look at her books from way back when. And I think they really form thinking around trends. The other thing, and these are more authors rather than books, but I would say Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell's thinking on kind of anything is amazing. Tipping Point, Blink. And I think those type of thought leadership books are my type of books, especially right now.
Excellent. And then finally, when you go to give a speech and you're walking up on stage, what's the song that's playing as you walk out?
Oh man, Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, good choice. Well done. All
Yeah.
right, Heather. Well, we do appreciate you stopping by. When we close out, let people know where they can find you online, and then give any last minute words of wisdom or advice.
Last words of wisdom or advice: get outside every day, take a walk under the sun, and realize that humankind has been through a lot of stuff over the years. And anytime looking forward gets too hard, look back and be inspired.
Well done. Thank you very much for being on the show. We will see you
All
soon.
right. Thank you so much. I
For
really
sure.
appreciate this.
Sure.
Bye.